Finally, a Transformers comic that explores death, grieving, the parallels between the Vietnam War and the Cybertronian War, PTSD, guilt, and the toll that war takes on an individual. For the kids, am I right? More than meets the eye and all that?
Besides, who would you be without me, Prime? Time to find out.
Recently, I released a video talking about how I believe that Optimus Prime, as he is portrayed in Transformers 1, set the gold standard for how to depict the Autobot leader in Transformers media. Of course, when I titled the video, "This is the best Optimus Prime," I knew that people would disagree with me in the comments below. People put forth their favorite versions of the character, and they were mostly the obvious ones. TF Prime Optimus, Generation 1 Optimus, Bayverse Optimus. But perhaps the most surprising recurring favorite that was mentioned in the comments was Skybound's Optimus Prime. I've known about Skybound's Transformers run since it started in 2023. Considering that it is the first Transformers comic to be published since IDW lost the TF comic license after publishing generally great stories within the franchise for almost 20 years, there was a lot of buzz around this new publisher getting their hands on Transformers. Fans were curious to see whether or not Skybound could match IDW's TF Comics quality, but any doubts were basically silenced after the first issue came out. Skybound's Transformers comic has released 14 issues out of a planned 24-issue run as of the writing of this video, and it has only gone from strength to strength every issue. It's outselling almost every Marvel and DC title, and it's receiving non-stop praise from Transformers fans. Honestly, we shouldn't have expected anything less, considering that it's being published by a company founded by Robert Kirkman and Image Comics, who both need no introduction. Despite being aware of this comic and the mountains of praise it was receiving, I still wasn't reading it. It's not that I didn't want to, it's just that stuff gets away from me. I've got a life to live, you know? But after seeing the amount of fans in my YouTube comments praising the series depiction of Optimus Prime and claiming that I wouldn't hold up TF1's Prime as the best if I read Skybound's Transformers, I couldn't ignore it any longer. So the other night, I finally sat down and I read the entire run up to the latest issue, number 14. What did I think? Well, let's just say that Skybound's Transformers makes Transformers 1 look like a cartoon for little babies. This ain't your daddy's Transformers, kiddo, and honestly, I think all of those YouTube comments were right. Daniel Warren Johnson's Transformers is a stunning comic book achievement, and it just might be the best Transformers story I have ever read. I am dying to talk about this comic, but to properly do it justice, I'm gonna have to dive into some spoilers. This is your official spoiler warning for Skybound's Transformers. If you haven't read the comic, then I highly recommend that you do so, especially if you are a Transformers fan. You have all been warned. With that being said, let's get into it. Skybound's Transformers is best described as the original 80s cartoon reimagined for the kids who grew up with that show who are now fully grown adults. So much so that the comic book's origin story for the Transformers arriving on Earth is essentially the exact same, with the Autobots and Decepticons both crash landing in the Ark on Earth after fighting each other on the ship. Although from that point onwards, the story heavily deviates from what occurred in the original cartoon in both narrative and tone. I'm not going to give you guys the full play-by-play of the comic's narrative here, because if you want to experience the full story back to front, then you should really just read the comic yourself. Instead, I just want to express how deeply I adore this comic book and highlight the points that make it a very special adaptation of the robots in disguise. One such feature being the comic's maturity. The book itself opens with a display of panels that intersect the Transformers' arrival arrival to Earth with images from the Vietnam War, establishing one of the narrative's best features, its ability to interweave Cybertronian and human culture and conflict in a way that feels earnest and thoughtful. Something that other TF media has struggled to do or has entirely avoided. Surprisingly, despite being a Transformers-centric story, we are still introduced to our human characters first. A young man named Spike Witwicky, his friend, possibly soon-to-be girlfriend, Carly, and Spike's alcoholic Vietnam vet of a dad, Sparky. The comics reinvention of these G1 characters is honestly brilliant, and they stand out as some of, if not the best human characters that we have ever seen from the franchise. Spike still mostly serves as a vessel for the reader to place themselves into the story, but he is elevated through his complicated relationship with his father, who is also clearly struggling with the death of his other son and Spike's brother Jimmy. But the real standout here for me is the comic's interpretation of Carly, who is head and shoulders above her original G1 counterpart, who, if we're being honest, was about as cookie-cutter girlfriend character as you could possibly be. She has shown the most growth out of any character throughout the issues, and it makes her one of the most interesting for reasons I will get into later. Even the cast of Transformers here is pretty subversive, all things considered. Sure, Prime is here like always, but due to Teletran 1 being destroyed by Optimus in an early battle to prevent the Decepticons from quickly outnumbering the Autobots, only a few bots were able to be resurrected. Over the course of the comic so far, more bots have been resurrected and repaired, but both sides are pretty bare bones. For starters, Megatron is just straight up not here. He's stuck in the Arctic again, or he's with Cobra or something. I haven't read the spin-offs of the Energon universe, okay? The Autobot team mainly revolves around Optimus, Ratchet, Cliffjumper, and RC. The Decepticons mainly consist of Starscream, Soundwave, Shockwave, the Constructicons, and the Seekers. Each character here feels familiar, but they are also given unique features in this comic that feel like natural evolutions. For example, Cliffjumper is basically fulfilling the role that Bumblebee usually holds, that being the bot who bonds with the human. Cliffjumper connects with Carly early on through a shared state of grieving. Cliff is mourning his fallen comrades from the war, and Carly is mourning her father, who dies after being squished by Starscream in the first issue. Starscream loves killing humans in this comic, and it's scary, man. Subverting the Bumblebee and Spike relationship and giving it to Carly and Cliff is great, and it evolves in interesting ways. They go from sharing their grief with one another to being split apart because Cliff didn't pull the trigger on Starscream when he had a chance because he was tired of killing. It causes Carly to abandon him because she is consumed by avenging her father and is furious that Cliff didn't kill Screamer when he had the chance. It's an interesting way of showing how grief affects people differently. Wow, I cannot believe I just said that about a Transformers comic. Starscream is just pure evil here. He crushes humans in his hands, he blows up hospitals, he abuses Soundwave's cassette tapes, and he is doing an awful job of leading the Decepticons in Megatron's absence. But it's all tied together by a really compelling origin story that basically shows us how Starscream justifies committing these atrocities in his own twisted mind. Soundwave is pretty much what you expect here, but he does show an exceptional amount of care for his cassette minions, taking on what is basically a parental role for them in this comic. Ravage gets injured pretty early on, and Soundwave spends most of the comic just wanting to fix him, but he's always forced to move on to something else. It's honestly pretty sweet. Shockwave is honestly pretty messed up in this comic, even by his standards. Here, he's essentially a mad scientist that loves to torture living creatures. You know, normal stuff. The Autobots here are pretty faithful to their previous iterations, with one exception. They all doubt Optimus's decisions at various points in the story, and it leads to characters that don't show the blind faith to Prime that we commonly see, and it's extremely compelling. But of course, we cannot discuss this without first talking about the obvious standout of the entire comic, Optimus Prime himself. To touch upon my previous point of whether or not Skybound's Prime can be considered one of, if not the best iteration of the character, well, let's just say I might have to go back and change the title of this video, because Skybound's Optimus Prime is the best version of the character that we have ever seen. There is a single moment in the comic that cemented this for me. After a particularly gruesome battle against the Decepticons, Optimus extends an olive branch to Soundwave, begging for peace. Soundwave considers the offer for a moment before swinging at Optimus. In retaliation, Optimus blocks the punch and declares, "Make no mistake, Soundwave. I desire peace, but I am no fool." That is Optimus Prime. When I talked about why I liked TF1's interpretation of Prime so much, I said that Optimus is so optimistic and desires peace so much in that film that it honestly makes him an idiot at times. Skybound's Optimus shares that same borderline blind optimism, but he can still be a ruthless fighter and make the hard decisions only a veteran commander can. He's not as violent as Bayverse Prime, but he doesn't mess around when it comes to defending his Autobots and Earth. When Shockwave threatens Cliffjumper, Optimus blows off his arm before he can even make good on the threat. This Optimus rips off his own injured arm and uses it as a weapon to beat the piss out of Skywarp. This Optimus is capable of incredibly violent acts, but only when he is forced to employ such methods. But then in stark contrast to this, Optimus also stops in the middle of a battle to mourn a dead Bumblebee. He basically cries when he accidentally kills a deer after he steps on it. This Optimus sacrifices some of his life force to use the Matrix of Leadership to save a human hospital on the brink of failure. He transforms into a truck to make a sick kid happy despite being heavily injured. This Optimus is a sweetheart who is also capable of replacing his severed limb with Megatron's cannon arm, dual wielding it with his own blaster to take on Devastator by himself and suplexing Devastator. This is what Optimus Prime is meant to be, a gentle being who is forced to be violent to defend what he believes in without ever fully giving into a path of violence. A moment that perfectly conveys this is when Optimus suffers a mental episode that causes him to lose control and beat Shockwave to death, only to be horrified by what he has done afterwards. This is a Prime who struggles to stay peaceful in a universe that seemingly only breeds violence, yet despite this, he never turns into the remorseless asshole that is Bayverse Prime. This is a version of Optimus Prime who strives to be the warrior of peace that he is in so many other stories, but he is plagued by too many flaws to be the perfect leader he desperately wants to be. I think I've sold the image of Prime here. I don't have to waffle on about it. You get it. He's perfect. If you disagree with me, then read the comic and you'll change your mind real quick. I really love the overarching plot here as well. This is a story about Optimus and his Autobots just wanting to live in peace and return to Cybertron, but instead they are forced to defend themselves and Earth from the Decepticons. Optimus has to balance his responsibility of saving Cybertron and ending the war while also ensuring that the war he brought to Earth doesn't destroy it. Optimus wants nothing more than to save his own planet, but he refuses to sacrifice Earth in order to do so. Optimus's devotion to Earth is actually constantly criticized by his comrades. Ratchet chews out Optimus for using the Matrix's power to help save the humans in a hospital instead of saving it to help revive more Autobots. Elita 1 completely loses faith in Prime so much so that she goes against his orders to prioritize saving Earth over Cybertron and begs him to stop before he blows up a chance for Cybertron's survival to save Earth. It's honestly heartbreaking. That's the real strength of this comic. It's able to tell a very mature and dark story while also still delivering fun Transformers shenanigans. It's like they found a perfect balance between the violence of Generation 2 and the earnestness of Prime and Animated. In the same comic run, we have seen Skywarp be ripped apart and cannibalized for parts by Starscream and Soundwave, and experienced a pacifist beach coma, surfing around space on a space surfboard in what I can only describe as the Transformers equivalent of Silver Surfer. Make no mistake, this is a dark and scary story, but it's also still fun. And just real quick too, I realized while I was writing this, I forgot to even mention the artwork or anything like that. I didn't say anything about it because it's just good. It's good art. It's honestly really, really great. There's some beautifully haunting imagery here, and it's this really nice sort of avant-garde version of Transformers. Like, even if you just look at the covers for this comic book, there's some incredible stuff on there. I mean, Optimus holding up the Earth. There's that beautiful cover of him with Megatron's arm cannon, like, walking into, like, this orange, like, hellhole looking bit of Cybertron. It's just, I didn't say anything about it because it just looks good. Like, there's nothing to say about it. It's good. Okay, that's my little rant on the art. Not rant, that's my little side piece on the artwork of the comic. Back to the main script. Wow, this is why I write my videos, okay? All right, I need to put a nice little bow on this conversation, so to wind this all down, I just want to quickly mention some standout moments that haven't already come up. Optimus takes the time to get to know Spike and makes an effort to adjust to life on Earth. Optimus reflects on the lasting impacts of war with a Vietnam vet. Cliffjumper breaking down after being presented with a chance to kill Starscream because he doesn't want to experience any more death is a very powerful moment. RC and Carly talking about guilt and grief is a thing I never thought I would see in a Transformers comic. Optimus sitting down with a scared Jetfire to calm him down as he adjusts to being trapped in his alt mode brought tears to my eyes. Beachcomber getting stuck on the moon and then finally making it to Earth by hitching a ride on the return journey of the moon landing is wild. Shockwave being amazed by the sight of whales in the ocean is a very humanizing moment for the character that is immediately shattered when he chews them up in a machine shortly after. The Decepticons arguing about the morality of Shockwave's torturing methods gives them a level of humanity that is rarely displayed by the faction. Ultra Magnus running away like a scared little girl after just seeing Shockwave due to what is clearly PTSD from being a subject of Shockwave's torture for years is shocking. The very real possibility of a Decepticon civil war coming in future issues is a very exciting possibility. And even after all of that, I feel like I've still only just scratched the surface of what truly makes this comic great. Maybe I should have done a video for each issue, if only I had the time to do such a thing. I am still in absolute awe of how amazing Skybound's Transformers is. I have never seen a Transformers story that has managed to create such a sense of wonder tinged with some brutal and dark stuff. This is Generation 1 with proper depth and meaning, and it's simply wonderful. If this comic upholds its current quality all the way up to the final issue, then I have no doubt it will be held up as one of the all-time great Transformers stories. I hope this video was cohesive enough to convey how much I love this comic. I adore it so much that it's difficult to express. If you still haven't read it, then please do. It's a great read for any comic book fan, and it is an essential one for any Transformers fan. With all that being said, I want to hear what you guys think. Have you read Skybound's Transformers run? Do you love it as much as I do? What are some of your personal standout moments? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, guys. It means the world to me. Until next time, stay safe, look after yourselves, and as always, I'll see you all in the next video.